Tim Binnall presents People of Flat Earth, the history of a very odd conspiracy theory.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm really excited about this next presentation. Tim Binnall is the news editor for Coast to Coast AM, as well as the host of the pioneering pioneering paranormal podcast, Binnall of America. For more than a decade and over the course of hundreds of BOA programs, he has interviewed a vast array of researchers spanning a wide spectrum of paranormal genres and ranging from bona fide esoteric icons to up-and-coming future players in the field. A graduate of Syracuse University, Binnall aims to maintain an outsider's perspective on the paranormal world with a distinct appreciation for its absurdities and a keen interest in the personalities and sociology of esoteric subjects. And boy, is he doing that to a T. Hey, my friend Tim, how you doing? Merry Christmas.
Hey, Smiles. Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to all the viewers out there in AA land.
Yes, that's Anomalous Anonymous. Yes,
that's right.
I think that was originally one of the possible titles that Greg was considering for the Excluded Middle back in the day. Instead of Excluded Middle, was Anomalous Anonymous. Well, you have been on the forefront of reporting on the flat Earth movement, and I really am always curious to hear your perspective on things. So, without further ado, let's get your slides up, and
all right.
This will all work. Hey, I also noticed you have a nice little tree there in the corner.
What's that?
I see you have a nice Christmas tree there in the corner.
Oh yeah, there he is. Yeah. All right. Yeah, let me do this. Share screen. Share screen. Let's go. Is that working?
Not seeing anything yet. No.
All right, let me see. Oh, here it is. Okay, your entire screen. Yeah, we'll do entire screen. There we go. Share. And now, how's that?
There we go. Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, I'll get out of your way. Here we go.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much. I want to start out, of course, by thanking Smiles and the folks at the Anomaly Archive for inviting me to be a part of this mammoth thing they've been doing, this Streamathon. So if you can help them out, folks, definitely please do. It's an honor, I guess you could say, and a thrill to be a part of such a huge collection of tremendous talent that's been making presentations over the course, over the last 6 weeks now. It's been a sight to behold. And I know everyone's kind of bummed out because of the COVID that we can't all get together and everything, but I want to give you the real paranormal convention experience. So I was up until about 4 a.m. drinking last night. So we'll do our best here today on this presentation. Now, what are we going to be talking about? The people of flat Earth. That is my presentation today. And before we get into that, who am I? I am Tim Binnall, as Smiles said. I started Binnall of America back in 2015. Joined Coast to Coast in 2007. Well, let me tell you the long story. I always do this, actually. I graduated from Syracuse University back in 2001. And when I did, my dad sat me down and he handed me a slip of paper. And then he dropped the Boston Globe want ads. He said, "This is how much you owe for college. Now go get a job." So I wound up working overnights at the high school that I graduated from, which is quite a strange experience. And in the process, discovered Coast to Coast AM and started listening to the show. Became a big fan. Over time, I started Binnall of America because I wanted to talk to these people that were on Coast to Coast. Coast to Coast brought me aboard to work for them in 2007 as a fill-in web guy, and then they expanded my role in 2015 to be the news editor for Coast to Coast AM. So I think we're just starting our 6th year doing that now. And the reason why I tell this story is also to give you a little bit of background, but also to encourage the people out there who are watching that you can do this. You can be a part of the paranormal community. Anybody can be a part of it. I went from an overnight janitor to actually appearing on the show on a regular basis now, Coast to Coast. So anyone can do it. There are no gatekeepers in the paranormal. Anyone who tells you that there are gatekeepers in the paranormal just can't hack it, quite frankly, because everybody I've ever dealt with in this field has been super accommodating. It's great folks. So anyone can do it. Anyone can do this. Look, I'm just sitting here. You can't even tell I'm wearing my pajamas. I'll be honest. I'm wearing this nice sweater, but anyone can be a part of this community. So if you're sitting there right now watching this and you're like, well, I want to do a podcast or a blog or whatever, do it. Do it. Please. I highly encourage you to do it. All right. So now, with all that said, let's get into the people of flat Earth. So why would I do this? Why would I want to get involved with the flat Earth thing? Well, my friend Paul Kimball put on an event a few years ago up in Canada, and he asked me what I wanted to talk about, and that's how I ended up becoming the Flat Earth guy, because I recognized from working with Coast to Coast that the Flat Earth theory was really weirdly popular. This was about a couple of years ago, so things have changed since then. But it was really, really weirdly popular, and I was like, why is this so popular? And that's kind of what led me down this path. So to give you a little idea, here is the Google Trends for Flat Earth over the last 5 years. So I think I did this like on Tuesday. So it's about 5 years ago Tuesday would be how popular it is. So that's basic Flat Earth. So then you go here. I like to do this when we do a live audience. This little guessing game. So the blue line here, that's the Flat Earth. This red line, what is this red line? So all the folks at home, you can feel free to guess. I can't see comments really. So, register your guess now. So this was 2015 through 2020. This is the popularity of Google Trends. This is like people punch in searching for stuff, searching for information on Flat Earth, searching for information on Bigfoot. So for a while there, you can see Flat Earth kind of meandering along here down at the bottom. The next thing you know, all of a sudden, it's right up with Bigfoot. At different times, it's been more popular, generating more interest than Bigfoot over the years. So, but it's not just that. Here you go, Flat Earth versus the JFK assassination. Pretty crazy. Kind of goes to show you how dead the JFK assassination is, but Flat Earth far and away more popular over the last 5 years. Ghosts. So, everybody loves ghosts. So obviously it's more ahead of them there, but even here you can see in this little chunk here from time to time, and right there, neck and neck with ghosts in interest. I'd say probably late 2017, early 2018. And UFOs, of course, is Big Daddy. No one's gonna beat UFOs. So I wanted to get into that. I wanted to find out where this came from. Really, that's really what I wanted to know. Because everybody's heard of the Flat Earth theory. It's been around forever. But what does that even mean? You're going to find out today, because that's what we're going to get into. Where did this thing come from, this Flat Earth theory? So let me get into it now with you. A brief history of the Flat Earth. It's not very brief at all, because this part keeps expanding every time I do the presentation. So, and I want to say, too, a little caveat before I start. I am not a Flat Earther. I don't believe in the Flat Earth. I'm fascinated by the Flat Earth people, fans of the Flat Earth and aficionados and whatnot. Flat Earthers. I consider myself a friend of the Flat Earthers. Whether or not they consider me a friend, that probably depends on which Flat Earther you're talking to. But I've spent time with them. I've spoken to them. I've broken bread with them. I've partied with them. I think they're good people. But I'm not here to tell you about why the Earth is flat, because I don't believe in that. And I'm also not here to tell you why it's not flat, because we all just know it's not flat. So we're not going to waste time going over this crazy, the ins and outs of this conspiracy theory per se. I'm not going to tell you 2 + 2 is 5 and explain why it isn't either way either. So, if you need to know whether or not the Earth is round, all you got to do is lie on your belly and watch the sunset, and then stand up and you'll see the sunset again. So that proves that the Earth is round. And you can actually do that. You can do that today, right after you finish watching this. So we'll get into the brief history of the Flat Earth. In the 6th century, Pythagoras proposed that the Earth is round, and in 350 BC, Aristotle confirmed it. So that's how far back this whole thing is, how long they've known. Let me move my notes here, see if that's a little better. All right. So the idea is largely accepted over time. Despite this 19th century myth-making, which suggested that Columbus was trying to determine whether or not the Earth was flat, that story is completely bogus. It was made up. It was made up in a Columbus biography. It was made up in the. It was made up in the. It was made up. Someone saying there's some trouble in the chat, so I hope that's not the case. So Yeah, it was made up in a Columbus biography. So, yeah, let me see. Sorry about that, folks. I'm getting bombarded here by, hopefully the flat earthers haven't taken exception. So, yes, Washington Irving, A History of the Life and Voyages of Christopher Columbus. Washington Irving of the famous Headless Horseman fame. He wrote that book. He said that this was what was going on with Columbus. It wasn't true. It was all a big fabrication. So somehow that stuck into the minds of people to this day, that they think that Columbus was out trying to prove the earth was flat or round, either way. But that wasn't even the case at all. So who did create the flat earth theory? Well, essentially, the flat earth theory that we know today was created by this guy, Samuel Rowbotham, who actually, at the time that he was the main proprietor or promulgator or proselytizer of the flat earth theory, only went by the name Parallax. He was mysterious. No one knew his name, which is pretty wild if you think about it. So he was an English inventor, a writer, an eccentric, a classic paranormalist, if ever there was one, really, as we'll get into in a moment. He was born in 1816. He dropped out of school at age 9. And in 1838, at the age of 22, his life changed forever with the Bedford level experiments. And what this was this is a 6-mile stretch of Old Bedford River in Cambridgeshire Fens. And what they would do is, what he did was he sort of observed down there, and he was convinced that the earth was flat. He did an experiment with a boat down the river. This was called the Bedford level experiments. At that point, he became convinced that the earth was flat. This is his story, let's say. There's some speculation that this is all a big contrivance, but we'll get to that in a moment. So, as I said, he was a classic paranormalist if ever there was one. He writes up a leaflet arguing that the earth is flat, and he starts touring around England advocating for the flat earth theory, explaining to people why the earth is flat. So in a way, a lot like contemporary paranormalists. If he was around today, he would be doing the Zoom streamathon, essentially, telling people that the earth was flat. So lest anyone thinks that he was really particularly good at it, when he first started out, a pair of newspapers reported on this in 1849, that he had a pair of lectures in this town in England, and between the lectures, he ran away after the first lecture, before the second one, because the people kept asking him questions, having him try to explain why the large hull of a ship disappears before the sails do, essentially why the earth is round. So he had no answer for that, and instead of BSing his way through that, he just took off. He ran away and left town and took all his flat earth materials with him. So this is sort of the basic idea of the flat earth shape that was going around for a while. And then in 1865, he publishes Earth, Not a Globe. This is his book, An Experimental Inquiry into the True Figure of the Earth, Proving It a Plane Without Orbital or Axial Motion. You don't need me to read all that. As you can see down here, by Parallax. And what fascinated people at the time, they didn't know who he was, but he was super friendly and not confrontational. So when you see these flat earth folks, sometimes they can be pretty confrontational. He had a whole different opposite attitude. I kind of likened him to sort of a Stan Friedman, where he was super, convivial and super nice and just kind of like won people over with kindness. And so he was a pretty good dude like that, and it made it difficult for skeptics to argue with him about whether or not the earth was flat, because he always had a little quick wit. He had a little rejoinder, a way of getting out of anytime they tried to pin him down. Now, this guy, we talk about the difficult flat earthers. This is probably he's the signature difficult flat earther. This is John Hampton. He was Rowbotham, or Parallax. Parallax is he was his understudy, I guess you'd say. He discovers the work of Rowbotham. He discovers the flat earth theory in 1869, and he is super, super religious. which is part of the appeal of this theory. This all came about in the 1860s or so, as the theory of evolution was coming along. Science was growing into a codified state. This was like really the first time science had become a thing, like in the mid 1800s. So it was causing a lot of turmoil with the Christian religious folks because they were afraid that science was going to usurp religion. And it also was problematic for the working class folks, the skill-based people, because like masons and stuff like that, because they were concerned about losing their edge and their knowledge. So there was like sort of two audiences that Robotham was appealing to with the flat earth theory. And it was becoming more and more popular as he's touring around England, much to the consternation of, scientific folks who couldn't believe that people were buying into this. So Hampton comes along, 1869. He becomes entranced by this work. And he sets about his own campaign. But he is like the opposite of Parallax, to the point that Parallax gets kind of pissed off at him because he is super intense, just argumentative, just bold, making these crazy challenges, claiming that he's going to pay out a bunch of money to anyone who can prove that the Earth is not flat. So this all culminates with a legendary, historic battle, if you will, that went down in 1870. So Hampton offered £500. This is back in 1870s. This is a ton of money. So he offered £500 to anyone who could disprove the Bedford level experiments that put Parallax on the map, that he claims was what really lit the fire of the flat Earth theory. So Alfred Russel Wallace, who is a naturalist and the co-discoverer, was a naturalist and the co-discoverer of the theory of evolution. So like a big-time scientist, folks. Wallace, unfortunately, you don't get rich from discovering the theory of evolution, apparently. So he could use the money. So he agrees to do this. So the two of them, they set about putting together their own Bedford-level experiment. And, of course, Alfred Russel Wallace wins, because he proves that the Earth is round by way of to the ships down the river. But Hampton, he doesn't like this. He refuses to accept the results. He takes Wallace to court on some technicalities involving judges and things like that. One judge had to drop out, so he replaced it with another judge, and it was quite messy. So he takes him to court to try and recoup the money, and then Hampton embarks on a nearly 2-decade-long campaign of harassment against Wallace. And essentially, anytime Wallace found a job somewhere, anytime Wallace got any publicity, and then personally, excuse me, and Wallace himself, Hampton would just bombard all these institutions, places, and Wallace with letters, angry, nasty letters. And in one such letter that was featured in court, Hampton writes, "I make no secret of having written thousands of letters declaring your conduct to be that of a cheat and a swindle. I only wonder your wife and family are not ashamed to live with you. How much longer is this to last? Do not dream of my getting tired." So this is a real wild card right here, John Hampton. Just look at the eyes. He was a bit of a character there. Eventually, his harassment of Wallace is so much, it's so overwhelming that he winds up in jail, in and out of jail for libel, because he refuses to stop writing these letters to newspapers and places where Wallace works and stuff like that. So finally, after about 17 years of this, Wallace eventually, he just kind of used to it. So he just regards this guy as a joke, and that's sort of the end of it. So Robotham, as I said, through all this, Robotham's like, dude, you got to stop. You got to stop. You got to stop just being such a dick, essentially, is what he says. You got to, you're just antagonizing people. You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. Just stop. So he doesn't, of course. Eventually, 1884, Robotham dies. He had given up the flat Earth game. Now, this is why it's suspected that maybe his belief in the flat Earth wasn't quite as genuine, because once Hampton came along and stirred up all this trouble and got all these scientists debunking the flat Earth, Robotham, he took off. He went off and became a snake oil salesman using the name Dr. Samuel Burley. So he was Robotham, Parallax, Dr. Samuel Burley. He also used a few other names, bounced around with different names. He was essentially a con artist. I mean, let's be honest. He was a con artist, but rest in power, Parallax. He died in 1884. Hampton dies 1891. So essentially, that's the first and second generation, the first really incarnation of the flat Earth theory. So then we move on here to Lady Elizabeth Blount. She carries on the idea in 1893. She takes all the materials that these guys had been producing, forms the Universal Zetetic Society, Zetetic being Greek for proceed by inquiry. And through around 1910, she publishes a magazine, cultivates followers, just tries to keep the flat Earth movement going. She attempts to do another Bedford level experiment. I haven't seen the picture, but she produces some kind of photo. It's very paranormal, very conspiracy in theme, if you will, but somehow has a controversial photo that she claims proves it once and for all. But that is a sham photo, and Lady Elizabeth Blount ultimately dies in 1917. I could do a whole lot on her. There's a great story about her getting involved in a con involving dentures, but we don't have time for that today. But yeah, she was quite the character. So she carries it on. Excuse me. Now we get to probably the biggest flat earthers, definitely the biggest in America yet. So all the while, this idea has been floating over to America. There's been American flat earthers who are promulgating the idea, and they're getting books shipped in, and they're writing their own pamphlets and stuff like that. So, but these two guys really do something pretty wild. You could say they put flat Earth on the map here in America in a way. So this man on the left, that's John Alexander Doughey, or Doughey, probably Doughey. He was a Scottish faith healer that came to America, a preacher man, if you will, and he amassed a following of 6,000 people over the course of his faith healing career. And eventually the congregation, if you will, became so big that they were trying to figure out what to do. And they eventually bought this huge plot of land in Illinois and created a city. They created the city of Zion, Illinois. And the church owned a lot of the land. So essentially, and in turn leased the land out to people in the town. So it was essentially like a tiny little theocracy in Illinois. It was Zion, Illinois. And now John Alexander Doughey, he was a flat earther for sure. He was a proponent of the flat Earth, but his understudy, guy on the right, Wilbur Volova, he's the one that really took it to a new level, because at some point, Doughey, as one can imagine, you've got a town, you've got 6,000 followers, there's a lot of money flowing around, there's an industry. They have like a really, I think it was like a candy that they produced in Zion, Illinois, that was like super popular throughout the country. So they had like a whole industry in the town that was funding the whole town. So as one can imagine, there's all this money flowing around. So eventually it's found out that Doughey is, he's cooking the books. He's doing something unsavory with the money. So Wilbur Volova, with the other church leaders, they usurp him. They toss him out. He's essentially booted from the town. I think he dies in exile down in Florida. And Wilbur Volova takes over the town. So now he's running the town. He is an adamant flat. So I was going to say something else. He's an adamant flat earther. He's super into it, and he institutes these strict, intense rules for the town. All kinds of various rules, like curfews at night. And people couldn't go to. There's like no bars, and it was all these crazy rules. I can't even I can't even get into it. The big thing that was of interest is that he has these giant signs put up throughout the town to warn people that they are not welcome in Zion, and they want them to get out of town. So these were all over town, all over the city of Zion. If you Google Zion, Illinois signs, you can see. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's essentially, it's well, you can say right here. It says, "Go and establish a settlement of your own." So they don't want anyone coming into the town unless they're going to be a part of the Christian Catholic Apostolic Church in Zion. Otherwise, they don't want anything to do with them. So these signs were all over the place, and some of the other rules, like there was no smoking in town. I think all the food was like all regulated. It was all super crazy regulated. And Volova he's kind of the face of the flat Earth in America, in the media especially. Now, the old sort of cliche about a preacher with the radio station, that was him. He was the first preacher to get a radio station, and then he got on the air, and I guess you could say he might have been the first. He might have been, I guess you could say, the first conspiracy radio guy, because he got on the air as a preacher and preaching the word of God and preaching the flat Earth theory to the whole country. And he was actually also going to be he was going to be a witness in the Stokes monkey trial, but that didn't turn out. They didn't end up needing him. So he was kind of a celebrity, I guess you could say. But in Zion, as you can see from the sign here, it was just a super intense place, because the church not only made all the rules, but they also had like their own police force. It was really, it would be an interesting, some of those places I'd like to go if you could time travel. I'd like to spend a weekend in this crazy town back in the 19-teens. So essentially, it all eventually falls apart. And in 1942, Volova dies. The reason why it all falls apart is because more people start moving to this city who are not members of the Catholic Apostolic Church in Zion. So, as we recently saw, elections matter. So the people who moved to town who weren't part of this religion eventually outnumbered the people who did. And they were tired of all these crazy rules and everything. So eventually they voted out all of the church members who held public office, and essentially just turned the town into a secular community. And with that, Volova was ousted. And I guess in a testament, he was quite the tyrant, and in a testament to just how disliked he was in the town, was that they instituted a parking policy. You had to have like a sticker on your car that would say that, that you were had registered your car and you could park in the city and everything. And they purposely made the symbol for the parking sticker a globe, as sort of one last FU to this guy, because he would have to put it on his car. So that's sort of the rise and fall of Wilbur Volova. He eventually dies in 1942. So, all right, now we're moving along to a little bit more modern times here. So the flat Earth theory, 1942, it kind of quiets down a little bit. Nothing really happening, for about a decade or so, 12 years or so. And then over in England, back where the birth of the flat Earth theory is a flat Earth renaissance by way of this guy here, Samuel Shenton. In 1956, he forms the International Flat Earth Research Society. And his reasoning for how he became a flat earther is that he discovered that the Earth was flat because he came up with what he thought was a revolutionary way of transforming air travel, where he would send up a blimp like dirigible, all right, over if I launch a dirigible over my house here, okay, and then if the Earth is round, it would rotate, and then the dirigible could come down at a different location along the longitudinal. So the Earth is spinning, the little thing's up here, and then it would drop back down, right? So when he tried to put this into effect, it did not turn out that way. I believe that's because the atmosphere rotates as well. But I never really looked into it, but I'm pretty sure that would explain why you couldn't use the dirigible dropping down like that. So he found the idea fall apart, and then he started looking into it more and was trying to figure out why this wouldn't work. And then he discovers all of the stuff from Robotham and Hampton back almost a century earlier. So he then takes up their stuff, and he becomes, the face and voice of the flat Earth theory as we know it, as has been going on since the 1800s. He becomes really a TV, radio personality. He lectures tirelessly. He's profiled in the New York Times. And yeah, so he's profiled in the New York Times. And let me see, I lost my place here. Where are you? Okay. So then in 1957, Sputnik launches, and he becomes kind of a mini celebrity because everybody wants to get his take on, they want to laugh at him, essentially. They want to get his take on how this Sputnik thing happened. How could that be possible if the Earth is flat? So he goes out there, and this Samuel Shenton, this era, is probably what might best be thought of as this is how the conspiracy part gets wrapped up into the flat Earth theory. Because until now, the argument of the flat Earth community was that the flat Earth theory, was that the scientists, they were just wrong. They had gotten the science wrong. There was sort of conspiracy. Oh, the scientists are lying to you. The scientists are lying to you. But it wasn't quite the conspiracy theory that we're getting into now, which is that the government, it's not just the scientists, the government now is actively covering up the flat Earth from people. So 1962, John Glenn orbits the Earth, and so Shenton sends him an honorary International Flat Earth membership with a joke saying, okay, wise guy. There's a debate in Parliament. Both candidates call each other flat earthers. That's where that started, 1965. So this is kind of where it's going here now. This is in the zeitgeist. This is sort of when the flat Earth theory really sort of got picked up by the mainstream media, the media that we kind of know a little bit more about nowadays, more like our media today, the 1960s. And then in 1968, this famous photo was taken on December 24th. So a couple days ago. This is the Earthrise photo. It was taken by the Apollo mission of 1968. I don't know which one it was. I don't have it off the top of my head. And so Shenton decries this as a fake. He says that it is. He says that this is a fake photo. This is where the idea that NASA is covering up the flat Earth by faking materials. This is where all this comes from Samuel Shenton. He's the one that started all that. And to a point, it sort of can capture his downfall, if you will. So he was super popular when this space race started. People really wanted to know, okay, they were just really into space. And it was like, oh, well, wait do you hear from this guy? He thinks the Earth is flat. And then all of a sudden he started getting all these media appearances. But as Russia and the United States had more and more success in space, his standing became more and more untenable, to the point that in 1968, when Newsweek published the Earthrise photo and had coverage of all this stuff happening, in a little box, he got a little slide box in the article, was "Where are they now?" And it was Samuel Shenton, flat earther. So that was kind of that kind of captures his downfall as best I can say. So by 1969, there's only 100 members left of his group, and it essentially fades away. Although now they're pulling in the moon hoax people. So of course, if you believe the moon hoax, you're more apt to get on board with the flat Earth theory. So this is where this cross contamination, if you will, of flat earthers and moon hoaxers. And you know, if you believe the Earth is flat, you by definition have to believe in the moon hoax. So that's kind of why it just gets added on as a layer here. By now, I guess for him, it's lucky moments. Shenton dies in 1971. He was an interesting character. I think that, again, he's another character I could do a lot more on. I feel really kind of bad for the guy in a sense because he was the subject of a lot of ridicule. People would write him letters asking him what, for him to spell out the theories and stuff like that. But it seemed like more often than not, people were messing with him and they were kind of mocking him. So he wasn't. He eventually died like lonely and in poor health and just overwhelmed. He had no support, so just overwhelmed by the sheer number of people who wanted information on the flat Earth theory. So he died in 1971. 1972, the blue marble photo was taken. This pretty much should seal the deal on the round Earth, one would think. But let me see. Then in 1970, in a testament, I guess you could say, to sort of where the flat Earth was in the zeitgeist of the world, philosopher Leo Ferrari forms the satirical organization, the Flat Earth Society of Canada, with the idea being that people should question everything. It's sort of like it's a very Discordian group, and his whole thing was that he would make earnest arguments for the flat Earth theory. And try to like kind of pin people down, but never really believing that the Earth was flat, but sort of advocating, that people should question everything. So it was an interesting satirical, psychological, philosophical sort of idea. He got a lot of media attention, and as you can see from the sign here, that I'm a Plano terrestrialist, he was wickedly funny. So there's a movie, like a half-hour documentary that they made about the flat Earth theory, and so the Flat Earth Society of Canada, Leo Ferrari and his cohorts, we talked about how the Shenton era brought in the conspiracy, the government conspiracy, the space conspiracy stuff. Leo Ferrari, I think, this is where you get the idea that the flat earthers are in on the joke. You hear that a lot. Oh, they don't really believe it. They're in on it. They like the attention or whatever. All of that could be applied to Leo Ferrari. That's his deal. He was in on the joke, and just trying to kind of get people to think differently. So that's an interesting chapter in the flat Earth theory. That was back in 1970. So we're getting closer and closer here to the modern era. So Charles K. Johnson was probably the last of the major figures, like you could say, the next generation, if you will. So from Shenton, died 1971. Just 2 years later, Charles K. Johnson, an American, he takes over Shenton's group, the International Flat Earth Research Society of America, and he changes it to the International Flat Earth Research Society of Canada and Covenant People's Church. So you can see now the religious stuff is always bubbling under the surface here with the flat Earth theory. They always often cite the Bible as the reason why the Earth is flat. So he publishes the Flat Earth News, and as you can see here, it's like their newsletter, and is a testament to the work that he did, I guess you could say. Now, when Shenton died, there were about 100 to 200 members. Well, no, when Shenton died, there were 100 members of the group, okay, in 1969. In the late 70s, there were around 200 members in the group. Okay, so Charles Johnson, he's been running the organization for about 7 years, and he's doubled the membership, but it's only 200 people. Okay, he keeps at it. He keeps at it, and he adds more religious stuff, and he really gets into the conspiracy stuff, really, really heavy conspiracy stuff, New World Order stuff. This was around the time of the Waco stuff, around the time of like the Oklahoma City bombing stuff. So you got to think like that 90s era, Bill Cooper-y sort of vibe that's going on at the time. And meanwhile, he's driving the Flat Earth Society, which just so happens to be like the Flat Earth and also a whole bunch of other conspiracy theories news. So again, as a testament to that, so we had 200 members of the group in the late 1970s. By the mid-1990s, he's increased that to 4,000 members worldwide. So he's got a pretty formidable organization by the mid-1990s. So in 1995, his house burns down, and he loses everything. He loses his entire collection of like flat Earth works and stuff like that. His wife dies in 1996, and he passes away in 2001, and the group itself folds 3 years later, so 2004. So we're up to 16 years ago now. This is the Flat Earth Society of Canada was reborn in recent years with the same satirical bent to it. We're seeing this is on Fogo Island on the very New Brunswick, I believe, or Newfoundland. And it says, warning, you are nearing the edge of the flat Earth. One false step could be your last. Number of people lost to date, 0. Okay, so that sort of is the end of the era, if you will, of the, of the sort of figurehead flat earther in a sense, which we'll get into now, the modern times here. So the internet comes along, or the flat earth gets brought back up by the internet. So if Johnson's group died out in 2004. 5 years later, Daniel Shenton, he's an American who moved to England, no relation to Shenton of the 1960s. He revives the Flat Earth Society. And as is the case with the internet, splinter groups start to form. There's all kinds of discord and different groups, different official Flat Earth type places form. And in a sense, the idea of a Flat Earth Society dies out with the internet. It's the democratization of the Flat Earth happens. And there's no sort of centralized group. There is still a Flat Earth Society, but there's really not. It's kind of a shell of itself, and I believe it may even be a satirical organization. I haven't looked into it. I think it also exists in a sense to just sell merchandise. So, all right, now we'll get into the modern Flat Earth Renaissance. So, as I said, what interested me a few years ago was why this happened, why this huge spike happened. So why it got so big. So essentially this here, which I guess you could say now looking back, was the peak of the Flat Earth Renaissance. It was bubbling up on the internet. It was bubbling around. It was people were talking about it. It was becoming a thing on YouTube and stuff like that. And so as you can see, this peak here, this is from the rapper Bob. In January 2016, he pretty much launches the Flat Earth into the zeitgeist. And he says, the cities in the background are approximately 16 miles apart. Where's the curve? Please explain this. This is where you hear this idea of where's the curve? That's sort of a Flat Earth catchphrase, if you will. So Bob posts this. It gets picked up by the media. And this is sort of the trick that the Flat Earth community has used since way back with Robotham, is that they get a lot of media attention, then the skeptics come along, and then they buoy the story back up, and more people hear about the Flat Earth theory. So back in January 2016, this is when it was, almost 5 years ago. This was, I guess you could say, sort of what kicked off the Flat Earth Renaissance in the minds of most people. All of a sudden, people started hearing, what is this Flat Earth theory? What is this Flat Earth theory? For his dedicated work in getting the Flat Earth theory back into the minds and thoughts of people around the world, or across the globe, if you will. Bob is honored with an honorary membership in the Flat Earth Society. So kudos to him. Then it keeps sort of getting more and more media attention. Kyrie Irving, then of the Cleveland Cavaliers, he endorses the Flat Earth theory. This causes a whole kerfluffle, if you will, in the sports world. And this was during NBA All-Star Weekend, so it's when there's really nothing else going on in the NBA. So all of a sudden, everyone was talking about the Flat Earth theory. And the Flat Earth theory, it lives on oxygen. it has to have people hearing about it. It has to have people discovering it for the first time. So Shaq then gets on board with the flat Earth theory. And as all this is going on, so this turns into a campaign from the flat Earth community. As I said, it's decentralized. There's different groups. There's like Flat Earth of Oklahoma, Flat Earth of Florida, Flat Earth, different, Philadelphia. So that's just what they start doing. They start buying billboards declaring or advising people to research flat Earth. This first one here popped up in Philly. Then another one turned up in Oklahoma City. And then a testament that you can never, a good idea almost always usually goes bad. Someone in Scotland, a flat earther in Scotland, took up the charge and started spreading the word in their own special way in Scotland. And this really clever one popped up in New Zealand. I'll give you a moment to read that. This was all like over the course of the summer of 2017, so not too long ago. And this was, it's sea level, not sea curve. There's your curve. Do research, YouTube. You can read the rest. Wake up. Okay. So then Flat Earth, they start having conventions. In November of 2017, which I believe was the first ever Flat Earth convention, over 525 people get together in, I believe it was North Carolina. Shortly after that, April 2018, 200 plus people go to the Flat Earth convention in the UK. There's a Canadian Flat Earth convention, 250 people in August 2018. Approximately 800 attend the second Flat Earth North America conference in Colorado. And it keeps on going like that, which, we'll get to that in a moment now. If we were talking earlier about sort of these figurehead people in the field, this is probably the modern version of Robotham or Shenton. This is the guy, Mark Sargent. I've actually met Mark. He's a pretty good dude. He seems genuine in his belief of the flat Earth theory. If you're going to see any flat earther in the media, it's going to be Mark. He is the modern day Parallax. So one guy who also got a lot of media attention, this was Mad Mike Hughes. He was going to launch him. He did, I guess you could say. He launched himself in a man-made rocket, steam powered, that he built himself, claiming that he was going to prove that the Earth was flat. That launch went well. Then he did another launch earlier this year, back at the start of 2020, and sadly, Mad Mike Hughes passed away. So again, rest in power, Mad Mike Hughes. That second launch crashed, and he died essentially. And then it came out afterwards that he wasn't really a flat earther, and that it was all for attention and for media. Got him more media attention. Again, that's the oxygen of the flat Earth theory. And so, will we ever know? I don't know. So why do people believe that the Earth is flat? Well, if you look it up here, there's 90 million reasons, I guess you could say. 90 million results when you ask Google. That in itself, I think, would be a presentation in and of itself. Look at it. If you go, what are UFOs? There's only 12 million answers for that. So it's like of eons bigger question of why people believe the Earth is flat. There are the true believers, I think, the laughing skeptics and the curious. Those are sort of the audiences you're mostly going to reach with the flat earthers. Now, this interesting survey here was conducted. If you want to wonder, this is February 6, 2018. You want to wonder, like, are they changing people's minds? This is an interesting number here. I always thought the world was round, but more recently I am skeptical, have doubts. So 5% of the people surveyed apparently are being swayed by the flat Earth theory, but there's still, but only 2% are diehard flat earthers. So that's an interesting. This is as it says, weighted to representative of the U.S. population. So that's sort of the snapshot of where we are with the flat Earth theory a couple of years ago. And there's a lot of hype about this when in the media when this came out, because if you look here, you can kind of massage the numbers to get something interesting, which is what happened. You say, I've always thought the world is round, but more recently I am skeptical, have doubts. And then you go down here and it's like, whoa, almost 10% of, or, you know, what, like 15%, or look at all these millennials, young people you know, are afraid the earth is not round. So that, you know, I wouldn't read too much into that because, as I said, if you go back here, 84% of the people, believe that the earth is round. I've always believed it. So they're not completely sworn over. But again, the religious stuff, flat earthers, that's very religious. It's an outsized portion of the people compared to the total population of people taking in the survey. So the other thing to talk about in modern flat earthery is they use the internet. Everything's done over YouTube. Everything's done over YouTube and social media. So not like QAnon, which we'll get into in just a moment. They rely on memes. There's all this memeing going on. I think I've given you enough time to read that. There's another one. So yeah, they if you go on to these different Facebook groups or message boards, flat Earth related, they share memes with each other. And they all have like YouTube channels. They go on YouTube all the time and broadcast constantly. So let me just see what else we got here. And by virtue, a rising tide lifts all ships in the last few years. By virtue of the flat Earth getting so popular, the hollow Earth has seen a slight renaissance, you could say. So, yeah, that's kind of the catch up there. We'll get to have we hit peak flat Earth in a moment. Just to sort of revisit a little bit of why the flat Earth theory is popular. Here's my theory, I guess. Here's my theory on the flat Earth theory, which is because it's fun. It's weird. It's just wacky. And in this day and age of 9/11 and Sandy Hook and QAnon, people who miss the weird, wacky, fun conspiracy theories, that's what the flat Earth theory, that's what it appeals to. It really appeals to people's minds. And I think the flat Earth people, they've had 150 years of perfecting their way of pitching the flat Earth theory. So what they do is if they want to sort of convert you, they will bombard you with like 200 questions about, okay, well, you can't answer this, you can't answer that, you can't answer this. So that's how they indoctrinate someone into the flat Earth theory. They hit them with all kinds of science questions, like why is it Venus and the Mars, like that conjunction the other day? They would be like, well, if it's this way, then how come, if the Earth is really round, then why is it that when the sun goes this way and that? And it's like only an astronomer or someone who has the time to look into it would know the answer to that. So that's kind of how they pull people over to the flat Earth theory. And, you know, like I said, it kind of was reborn at the turn of the century in this post 9/11 period. And what the flat Earth, if you look back on everything I've been talking about today, if you look at it, you start with parallax, it goes up, okay, and it gets popular. Then all of a sudden, the scientists and the media start talking about it, and they start debunking it, and then it starts to go back down. Then it goes back up when another generation discovers it, and it sort of percolates in the underground. Then all of a sudden, the media notices that people are talking about it. Then the scientists and the media start debunking it, and then it goes back down again. Shenton, same thing. It goes back up. People are talking about the space race. All of a sudden, they're saying, oh, what is this flat Earth theory? Media gets involved. They debunk it. It goes back down. So it's a series of waves. And what I think is, the question is, have we hit peak flat Earth? I will contend that the answer is yes. Based on what I've been watching over the last 5 or 6 years. Again, here is the peak. Really, that was the Bob tweet. But if you look at the Google, if you look at it, it really was right. It really had its heyday in this new renaissance. I assume people can see my mouse. If not, this has been a slightly confusing presentation. But if you look here in this middle portion, that was the heyday of the modern flat Earth theory. And then it's dropped down, and it's sort of slowly kind of winding back down. I don't have a graph, really. I should dig those out. I have backdated graphs. I don't know how accurate they would be, but it's winding down to low levels, essentially, is the point. And what I think has happened is, again, it peaked up. The media heard about it. Scientists were aghast that people thought the Earth was flat. So then they hit it, and they everything that's old is new again. It's not new anymore. During this peak period, everybody who hadn't heard of the flat Earth theory, chances are they heard about it then. So you can't win over anybody else. There's only so far you can go. So that's kind of what happened, I think. And then this period here, I am of the belief that you saw some spillage into the QAnon community, because there are flat earthers in the QAnon community. There's a lot of flat earthers who are super into Bitcoin. That's a huge thing in the flat earth community. And this year especially, I've seen, and it's really remarkable, just a huge conversion of flat earthers over to, I guess you could say, pandemic truthers. I'd say every flat earther I know, and shockingly I know quite a few, is a flat earth, is a pandemic truther. Wow. So that's where they're going. I would check out Behind the Curve on Netflix. This was sort of the last hurrah. This is when you knew. It's kind of like one of those things. If things get big, then you know it's getting big. Then all of a sudden the media comes along and the movies come up kind of right after the thing is big. So these movies are about the flat earth theory. This top one's terrible. I wouldn't recommend it, but this one, Behind the Curve on Netflix, is the one you want to see. It's on Netflix. It's outstanding, Behind the Curve. And that's it. So there you go.
Awesome. That was fantastic, Tim. Thank you so much. You actually did address one of the questions, which was the flat earth theory has lost a lot of followers to QAnon, or do you think they will merge back in the coming years?
Do I think flat earther that? No, I don't think so. I think this pandemic's I think it's taken them away from the flat earth. There'll still be people that are like OG flat earthers that'll still be, a part of it. But I don't know if we're going to see it like it was the last few years. I just don't know if it's going to be. The novelty's not there anymore to the media. The novelty's not there. You can just see it. I remember watching the original sort of when the Bob thing happened. It was like, oh my God, people are really into that flat earth thing. Flat earth is a thing. People really, and now it's like, people know what it is. People have heard about it. So I think part of the problem with the flat earth theory too, is you can only go so far. You can only they can try scientific experiments and stuff like that, but you can't, it's not like a UFO thing or Bigfoot or even ghosts. There's nothing new. Nothing new is happening with the flat earth theory. So at some point you just burn out. If you're a layperson or whatever, you just burn out because there's only so far you can go. You just keep going over the same material over and over and over again. And then it's then I think they move on to QAnon. They're still flat earthers, but they're just that's canon. It's
foundational.
It's a secret spy organization that's taken down the satanic pedophiles and everything else. And all of this happening on a flat earth. Can you believe it? So I think that's kind of where they're at.
Well, and that kind of gets to this other question of red pills. Are there any politicians who have publicly supported the flat earth theory?
Yes, there's one in Canada. I don't have her name off the top of my head. But yeah, if you do Canadian politician, she was very as you can imagine, it was very controversial. But there was one politician in Canada who did endorse the flat earth theory.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for your presentation. We're a little bit behind here, so I gotta say thank you again.
All right, really thank you for everybody who watched. I had a great time.
Great job, man, and really, I can't wait to see you in person again. It's been far too long.
Absolutely, yeah. Everybody help out the Anomaly Archives if you can, please. And have a great and happy New Year.
All right. Thanks, Tim. All right, folks, you can go to binnallofamerica.com and support Tim by visiting his website and supporting him through his podcast. It's a great podcast. I've been listening to it for, since I think 2006 or so. All right, folks, we'll be right back with our next presentation, which is going to be a discussion between my good friend David Perkins and I. So sit tight, and we'll be right back.